Welcome to This Explainer. Let me ask you a critical question right out of the gate. When you're building a new venture, do you rely on abstract theory or do you rely on hard, verifiable facts on the ground? Today, we're going to walk through a highly structured framework called the Scientific Method for Startups. We're going to see exactly how to transition your brilliant ideas from the whiteboard right into the hands of real paying customers.
Okay, let's dive into this. The absolute highest stakes question you face as an entrepreneur is this: will the dogs actually eat the dog food? I mean, you can build the most elegant, logically perfect product in the entire world, but if your customers don't actually want it, well, you don't have a business. We need to agitate that risk right now, way before you spend a single dime on development.
To de-risk your idea, we're following a structured roadmap today. First, the price of poker. Second, identify your key assumptions. Third, test before you build. Fourth, define your MVP. And finally, track your success metrics.
I absolutely love this story to set the stage. Bob Metcalfe and David Boggs invented Ethernet, which is basically the foundational tech that powers our internet. But back in the day, IBM hated it. They brought David onto a panel with these technical experts who used elaborate computer models to, quote-unquote, prove that Ethernet was vastly inferior to IBM's token ring architecture and would literally never work. David, who had already built over 100 working networks at this point, simply stepped up to the microphone and said, "Ethernet apparently does not work in theory, only in practice. Real-world practice always beats untested theories. Keep that in mind as we go through this whole shebang."
All right, step one, the price of poker, transitioning from inquiry to advocacy. You see, when you decide to stop researching and start actually building, the price of poker shoots way, way up. You're moving out of inquiry mode and stepping into advocacy mode. And here is the danger. Behavioral economics teaches us about this thing called the IKEA effect. When you build something yourself, you attach so much more value to it. Once you start writing code or manufacturing physical goods, the financial and emotional costs of throwing that work away and changing course become incredibly high. You've got to de-risk your idea before you hit this point.
Moving on to step two, identify your key assumptions. Basically, don't substitute your intuition for actual testing. You really need to sit down with your team and list every single major assumption that absolutely must be true for your business to survive. And a good key assumption has to meet these 5 specific conditions. It's got to be specific and descriptive. It must be singular. Like, if you have the word "and" in your assumption, break it in 2. It obviously must be critically important to your success. It needs to be measurable, so you're looking at unbiased data. And finally, it must be completely testable. Decoupling your assumptions like this, that's how we do real science.
Step 3, test before you build. We're talking cheap, rapid, and localized experiments here.
Let me give you a fantastic example of a cheap, localized experiment from the source material. A student team wanted to launch a coffee truck near a college campus. To stand out, they assumed they could build a loyal following by covering the truck in chalkboards with prompts to inspire customer engagement. Now, instead of going out and buying an actual truck, they just found a blank chalkboard wall in a super busy campus corridor at 8 a.m. and wrote, "Blank makes me smile." By noon, that entire wall was overflowing with student responses. They empirically validated their engagement hypothesis with a piece of chalk. $0 and 4 hours of waiting. Now that is the gold standard for testing.
All right, step 4, define your MVP, the minimum viable business product. Now we're really raising the stakes and transitioning into building an integrated system.
You've probably heard the buzzword MVP, right? Minimum viable product, from the Lean Startup methodology. But we kind of need to clear up some confusing jargon here. In the Lean Startup framework, an MVP often just tests an individual assumption, kind of like our chalkboard experiment. But what we're talking about is a minimum viable business product, or MVBP. An MVBP is a complete systems test. And here's the absolute crucial distinction. You do not have a meaningful business until you have a transaction. A true MVBP requires a paying customer.
So how do you pull that off without burning through cash? The concierge strategy. It brilliantly illustrates how you achieve an MVBP by basically faking it till you make it. Instead of building complex software, you use highly personalized, non-scalable human labor behind the scenes. Think of this startup called Style Up. They wanted to provide women with personalized, daily fashion inspiration based on the local weather. Instead of building some crazy, complex AI backend, the founder simply concierged it. She manually checked the weather and personally sent daily styling emails to a handful of friends to see if they'd even open them. She faked the automation to prove the value first.
The big takeaway is that your MVBP must strictly follow this rule of 3. These are absolutely non-negotiable. Number 1,
The customer actually gets value out of using the product. Number 2, the customer pays for that value. Number 3, the product is sufficient to kickstart a real-world customer feedback loop so you can iterate and improve. Seriously, if it doesn't hit all 3, it is not an MVP.
Step 5, track your success metrics. This is where we look for facts on the ground. And that leads us right into the terrifying, but honestly totally essential, dog food fable. Imagine this brilliant chemist in an ivory tower. He drops $3 million engineering this flawless, cheap, perfectly nutritious dog food that guarantees whiter teeth and better sleep for the dogs. He builds a whole plant, launches a massive marketing campaign, and finally puts the bowl in front of the dog, and the dog refuses to eat it. The company spectacularly crashes and burns. Guys, this happens all the time in the real world. You can build something flawless in theory, but if the end user simply rejects it, you're completely dead in the water. To make sure you aren't manufacturing dog food that nobody wants to eat, you need to build a dashboard of key adoption metrics. You can't just rely on warm, fuzzy, qualitative feedback anymore. The hard data gets the last word. You should be tracking initial interest, your conversion rates at every single step of the funnel, the actual purchase and payment, are they opening their wallets, and your retention or churn rates. Finally, track customer advocacy, which is often measured by a Net Promoter Score, just to see if they love your product enough to actually tell their friends about it.
Let's look at the power of these numbers in action. Remember StyleUp, that fashion email startup we were just talking about? Well, when they started tracking their MVP metrics, they found they had a 70% daily email open rate. To put that into perspective for you, the industry average was just 14%. Plus, their users were forwarding the emails, driving massive word-of-mouth growth with literally zero marketing spend. The data unequivocally proved their target audience loved the value.
Here's another incredible data point for you. This startup called ThriveHive built a unified marketing platform for small businesses. They ran a private beta, but the real moment of truth was testing if users would actually pay once the free trial ended. The result? A massive 74% of their beta testers converted to paid subscriptions. They had hard, concrete proof that people would open their wallets, the dogs were eating the dog food, and the owners were paying for it. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought. You might have the perfect theory in your head. You might have the most beautiful business model ever designed. But everything changes when reality hits. What will actually happen when you finally put the dog food in the bowl? Identify your assumptions, test them cheaply, build your minimum viable business product, and just let the data tell you the truth. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this framework, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.